What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are not here to play school. We're here to talk the college football slate. Jake Micah, as always, joined by my brother Alex Micah. Huge college football slate this weekend. It's the third Saturday in October, which is relevant for one of our games we're talking about. As always,
very true.
We're sponsored by Outlet Liquor, your place to buy a case every Saturday and every day of the year. Wherever you need football, our football marathon
is well underway.
In the holidays, whatever. But I'm saying every day they'll figure it out.
Every day of the 55 days of football, get a case. Why not?
Beautiful. It's a beautiful time. Beautiful time. October, just a wonderful experience. The month of October is, and we have a great slate upcoming for this Saturday. And let's get right into it. We're starting with the big game, the big guns. The Georgia Bulldogs at the Texas Longhorns. Texas, 5-point favorites. Georgia obviously has the one loss on the year to Alabama on the road. Now they have to go to Texas. Texas has looked like a wagon all year. Their two biggest games so far, destroying Oklahoma and destroying Michigan. But this is obviously a tougher test than both of those teams. Saturday night, the biggest. I mean, last weekend we got a real big taste of it, of Oregon, Ohio State, and USC Penn State, of the new realignment and the beauty that it can be in our week-to-week college football viewing. And the SEC is deciding to get in on it. I know that, and it was, I know like Texas and Oklahoma was an SEC game, and that was kind of fun, but we've seen that game every year for our entire lives. This is the first crossover for the SEC where we're like, oh, okay, like we mean business now. Like this is a big time game between two huge teams. It's gonna be awesome. Like there's no underselling how epic this game is gonna seem as we're starting it up. But there's a game on the field that has to get played, Mo. But how do you feel about just the vibes of Georgia Texas coming into the week?
I mean, this was a game that's been circled on any college football fan's calendar since the schedule came out. I mean, however many months ago that was. The season has like the way the season is like basically designed so efficiently for Texas, their first year in the SEC, where they really don't have that stringent of a competition that they have to face, and they get their biggest game of the season. Obviously, Oklahoma, that's always a huge game, but that's a neutral site. So even though Oklahoma was technically the home team last week, neutral site game. So you know whatever happens, they had to go to Michigan. That was scheduled before they came to the SEC. But their biggest game in the SEC schedule being at home, I mean, that's pretty nice. That commissioner was throwing Texas a bone a little bit there. But I mean, this is what these matchups are what we dreamed of when people were talking about. Oh, these conferences are getting, these teams are joining. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma were the ones who kicked off this entire wave of all these teams moving around. And then it's followed. The Big Ten was like, well, we got to do something. So they went and poached the Pac-12, and then the Big 12 was like, well, we're gonna poach the Pac-12. And this is what college football is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the two best teams playing each other. Maybe not the two best teams, but two top 5 teams playing each other. It's better for the sport if this is happening not at the end of the year only for national championship, but if this is just a weekly game, a weekly occurrence where we can see top 10 opponents. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, the atmosphere is going to be amazing. The crowd in Austin is going to show out. College game day there this week. They announced it. This is how confident college game day was. They announced it during game day last week. They're like, and we'll be in Austin next week. They're like, I don't care. Oklahoma could smoke Texas. Mississippi State could upset Georgia. We don't care. We're going. Yeah. We're going to Austin. And that's how big of a game this is.
Massive weekend in Austin, not only because of this game, but also the F1 race on Sunday. Yeah, so that town is going to have some insane vibes all weekend long, and it's going to be fun to see.
So you have it in here, pseudo SEC championship game. If Texas wins, they're all but guaranteed. They have a tough game on this schedule, Mo, left after Georgia. They have to go to A&M. That game is not a given the rest of the way. The Vanderbilt game could be tricky too. After what we saw Vanderbilt do with Alabama, they have to go to Vandy. Wouldn't have thought that. But the rest of the schedule, they do have Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. So they could have a nice little stretch of unranked teams before that A&M game. But who knows? I'm not. This isn't to be about A&M, but A&M could be a top 10 team by the end of the season when we're talking about.
I mean, you're not. Yeah, you're not. Excuse me, you're not wrong. I mean,
but it is. This game could solidify them as like no matter what happens, if they go 4-1 down the stretch, they're good. Something like that.
Yeah, and I still think even if they win this game and then they slip up that last. I mean, the first time playing A&M since A&M moved to the SEC back 2009. Is it Colt? Is it? I want to say it's maybe 2000.
I think it's
2008.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
When A&M left the Big 12 and went to, or Big 10 at the time, even whatever, or Big 8, I guess it wouldn't have been Big 10, Big 8, Big 12, whatever it was when A&M left.
2011 was their last game.
2011. Either way, when A&M left, this is the first time that these programs are going to play each other again, which is crazy exciting. Anyways, there was always the rumors, that A&M didn't want Texas to come to the SEC, and there was like, oh, they're going to be the one team to block their moving over, whatever it is.
That'd be so petty.
Even if they beat Georgia and they win out the rest of the season, up until that point, even if they lose A&M, it still is a pseudo SEC championship game because if Texas loses that game, they're still going on to. Huh?
You're right.
Oh, okay.
I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, they're still moving on to the SEC championship because they'll only have that one loss. A&M, I mean, maybe this is a different A&M team than we've seen in the past, but I still see plenty of opportunity for them to slip up on the before the season's over too.
Yeah, I agree. And so this game is important. It's not a death knell for Texas if they lose. For Georgia, for the Bulldogs, it's a desperation time for them. After losing that game to Bama, it wasn't a great look. Just the whole experience was not a good look. Even coming back, you never felt good. Even if they coming back in that game as close as they were, you're still looking at it like, man, this team it's more gettable than they have been in years past, right? Like they looked susceptible. They obviously looked susceptible against Kentucky earlier this season. They only won by 10 points last week against Mississippi State. So
right, and that game came down to.
And we're talking one thing though. We're talking about schedules the rest of the way. They also have to go to Ole Miss and host Tennessee in back-to-back weeks in November. So Georgia has a tough schedule the remaining of the way. But keep going. Sorry.
No, and you look at that game, it's like the last two games, honestly, the Bama game and the Mississippi State game. Carson Beck has, had a lot of turnovers. Yeah, 5 interceptions the last 2 games. 3 of them were against Bama. I mean, he threw for 459 yards last week against Mississippi State, but it was like because he had to. Like they were in a bad spot in that game if he didn't put up those step up and put up those numbers. And that's the biggest issue. We've talked about for all these SEC matchups between the teams. I mean, even for Oregon, Ohio State, we talk about what quarterback is going to come down to. And I trust Quinn Ewers more than I trust Carson Beck. Going into the season, could you say that was the case? I don't know, but I think really, and before the season, I think they were both being talked about as like future top 10 picks. Both of them are going to be Heisman front runners. And through different ways that the season's broken out for both of them, Quinn being hurt, quote unquote hurt. I still don't know if he actually was hurt. Quote unquote hurt. So he slipped down in the rankings because Arch got in, and then Carson playing pretty pedestrian. And now who knows what's they're still probably first round picks. They're not going to be Heisman favorites. They're not going to be contenders. But I still think that Quinn is the guy. And if you got to trust your quarterback, he got all that rust out in that first quarter last week against Oklahoma that you would expect him to have. I mean. And it's a rivalry game, so he was a little shaky. I mean, he had a really bad overthrow that led to an interception. He had another overthrow that hurt Isaiah Bond. Actually, he got taken out of the game for the rest. But I think he's back and he's ready. They're gonna be at home, and I'm trusting Texas in this game.
Yeah, I don't think. I think Georgia's going to be closer in this game than they were at Bama. I don't think it's going to be a blowout and then a comeback situation. I don't think they're going to get blown out, but I think Texas, we've talked about it all year. Texas is far and away the best team in the country. They're the deepest team in the country. There's not really anywhere where Georgia can attack them or a place where I'm like, oh, Georgia's much better than Texas. It's on the road. I just don't think that I don't think they have the weapons. I don't think they have the X factor that can get over on this Texas team unless Texas just is like messing up, unless it's chaotic Texas that we've known from years past, even pre-Steve Sarkisian, when they've been in these big moments and crazy things just happen. Like we talked about last year with the Red River game. We were talking about it last week. You know, that's a chaotic game where if they won that game, who knows where they end up in the college football playoff ranking and at the end of the year and everything else. So as long as they can avoid one of those sugar high performances that the Texas program has been prone to in years past, they should handle this game. I think it's a 5-point spread. I would say Texas wins like 34-24. I think they can win this by 10 points or more.
I mean, I'll be remiss to say I don't think it's gonna be that high of scoring game. Texas's defense has only let up 3 offensive touchdowns the entire season. They're only letting up 6.3 points a game. It's like next level the way that defense is playing. It's absurd. They have arguably one of the best linebackers in the country, Anthony Hill Jr., who's only a sophomore. In Red River last week, he had 3.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks and like 8 solo tackles total. He's an absolute animal. I just don't think Georgia has any guys on their offense that are going to be able to go up against that defense and do anything.
They might not be able to.
So, I mean, I would think Texas is going to win. I think obviously 5, it's a close game. It's a top 5 team. They're going to win by, I don't know. I don't want to say 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say by 10 points like you did, but I'll keep it a little lower in the score. I'll say they're going to win. I'll say it's 11 points. I'll say they're going to win 21-10. I think Georgia will get 1 touchdown, but I mean, I just think that Quinn is a better quarterback and this defense is the best in the country. And they're just going to take control of the game.
Yeah, I think that's where I think we're both in agreement there. We're expecting Texas to win and still be number 1, and then Georgia's in a danger zone territory for the first time in a long time.
Possible still playoff team in the expansion, but the chance for the SEC
they still
title.
Have 2 games, and they still have 2 tough games down the stretch against one of the teams that we're about to talk about. The Alabama Crimson Tide are traveling to the Tennessee Volunteers, who still have Georgia on the schedule too. So this is a first of a tough gamut left for the Vols, who are number 11, have dropped in the rankings after 2 weeks of struggles. They went to overtime last week with a bad Florida team. They obviously lost at Arkansas a couple weeks ago. So polls not loving Tennessee. Polls still loving Bama, though, at a 1-loss team, even with that loss to Vanderbilt. The win to Georgia holding up, but not enough to put them over Georgia, which is hilarious. And just it's why these AP polls make no sense sometimes. But we're still early enough in the SEC schedule where we know that these games are coming up, and all these games have to work themselves out at some point, one way or another. And this is kind of one of them. This isn't an elimination game per se, but it kind of could be, because there could be the way the teams are working out right now in the big conferences. Like if you look at the AP poll, there might be the bubble of the conference, or the end of the college football playoff might be a bunch of 10-2 teams or 9-3 teams that they might consider as good as 10-2 teams. You know, because look at the teams right now. I'm not going to do it by like conference or anything because and try to figure that out. Just think of the teams right now. Clemson's 5-1 at number 10. Iowa State at 9-6-0. LSU 5-1. Notre Dame 5-1. Tennessee 5-1. BYU 6-0. A&M's 5-1. We were talking about them. Boise State 5-1. There's a lot of these teams that could a bunch. If half of those teams end up 10-2. It's going to be a huge bubble of 10-2, 9-3. And so this game could be a deciding factor for a playoff spot if both these teams ended up with 2 losses in the end of the season, obviously head to head. But this could be an elimination game. And I think both teams should treat it as such, honestly.
Well, it is. And then, I mean, if you look at the internal, like you're talking about the AP rankings, if you look at the SEC rankings right now, the way it's broken out, it's Texas is 1, and then it's Bama, then Georgia, then Tennessee. So we're the same way we're talking about kind of like a pseudo SEC championship game. You could look at this as like there aren't divisions anymore, but these are your 2 like division finals about seeing which teams are going to go on.
Yeah, it could be.
Let's just think. It's gonna be interesting to see the college football. The first poll comes out, I believe, next week. That we're gonna see week 8 or week 9. We're in week 8 now. Week 9, I think it's
the week after. I think
week 10. Okay.
Wait, next weekend is no.
No,
the week after. It's the first weekend in November.
Okay, so we got 2 more weeks. We're gonna see. It's gonna be interesting to see with because obviously no matter what, we're getting multiple lost teams out of this weekend. Obviously, well, if the Texas will get their first loss, but we're gonna have multiple lost teams. We'll see where they rank in that top 12. and
It's true.
how much the CFP, who's kind of always favored the SEC in general, how much are they going to favor them now over undefeated teams in the Big 12? Iowa State and BYU, like you said, both are 6-0, who don't play each other unless they'll face each other in the Big 12 championship. So both those teams, hypothetically, could be 12-0. Are they really going to be left out of the playoff as a 12-1 or 13-0 team? Obviously, a 13-0 Big 12 champion is going to be in, but is a 12-1 team going to be left out for a 10-2 Tennessee or a 10-2 Alabama?
They might.
I mean, they probably will, but I mean, I don't know. I don't really agree with that. I don't think it should be the case.
That's what I mean. We have to let it play out. But right now, most of the top 20, the only team in the top 25 with 2 losses is Michigan, who we'll talk about in a couple minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, and we're over where all these teams are halfway through the season. So obviously there are a lot of losses. There's a lot of season to come, a lot of ways to go. But I'm just saying, it feels like it's going to be some 10-win teams that are left out of the playoff this year at the very least. And it's going to be crazy to see that because everybody's going to have a good argument. But that aside, this game in general, both these teams have kind of been – it's been weird. Alabama, you have in here reeling from the Vanderbilt loss because they struggled last week too.
They did.
Yeah, let's be real. They struggled with South Carolina to the point where South Carolina has a 2-point conversion to tie the game at the end. And they really have struggled for 10 straight quarters because they almost gave that game away to Georgia in the second half.
Yeah.
So they've had 10 quarters of bad football. And now they have to go to Tennessee, to a team that is like they're not catching a Tennessee team who's going to be resting on their laurels by any means. Tennessee is just as desperate as they are because they've had a bad loss on the road the same exact week and then also struggle with a game last week in Neyland Stadium at home against a rival. And so they're both kind of teams that are in the same exact spot, except for the fact that Bama's loss looks a little better. So if that's what you want to say, oh, well, Bama or I guess, but it doesn't really matter to me between Vanderbilt and Arkansas. Vanderbilt's ranked like 35th in like FPI and stuff right now. So Vandy is like a decent loss, but both losses to mid-tier SEC teams on the road, these teams are the same. And so the only thing that I can look at here is I do think Bama is a little better of a roster. I think they're a little bit better of a team, and the struggles have been real for Nico, who's a freshman quarterback in this game, compared to Jalen Milroe, who's obviously a veteran quarterback.
Who's a senior, yeah.
I think that playing at home is going to be really helpful for them. And if there's going to be a win that I don't think Tennessee's going to go. I think it's like a couple years ago where Tennessee's going to go get stomped on the road at Georgia. But I think Tennessee finds a way and wins this game in Alabama. And Alabama has a terrible year in the state of Tennessee that could ruin their national championship hopes. I really think it's going to happen. I think Nico has struggled the last couple weeks, but being home for this type of game, and we're seeing what we saw, like Georgia's been able to do on them, and even Sellers last week, getting 25 points for that South Carolina team is crazy. Because that team is not good offensively. Like this Bama defense has some issues, and I think that Tennessee can exploit it enough. The home crowd, it'll be a close game though, like 2 points, 3 points, something like that.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. And I mean, the last time we saw Alabama come into Knoxville, it was that insane game with Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker that Tennessee won 52-49. I don't know. It's my thing. Like we talked about the first 2 weeks of the season, everyone was talking about Nico, and he's like, oh, we're using him as a first name status, but it's like he's so good, he's first name status already. He's the future of this amazing quarterback or whatever. It's like he hasn't looked good at all since they started SEC play. He has. What did I say? I think I wrote about it. He has only 8 total touchdowns on the season, and that's most of those came those first 2 weeks against Chattanooga. Like I think he's just too young. And I say this for every single game. I'm taking the more experienced quarterback that I trust more. And this is the same thing I said when it was Alabama and Georgia. I took Jalen Milroe because I trusted him more and what he can do with his feet in the game as well. I gotta stick with Bama here. I don't think they're a top team in the SEC. I don't think that if they win out and they have to play Texas, I don't think they would beat Texas at all. and I mean, I never would have thought they would have lost to Vanderbilt either. But I don't know. I just think Tennessee has a lot of growing to do, and I think in another year with more more reps for Nico and then more time in that system that Heupel runs, then they have a chance about being like a contender in the SEC. But I don't think it's this year.
And we'll see. I mean, I think both these teams could be on the outside looking into the playoff picture by the end of it.
It's highly possible.
That could be where we're at too. So it's going to be interesting. It's close enough spread that I'm not surprised that I'm not surprised that you're going Bama and I'm going Tennessee here.
Well, you are a semi-Vols fan, so
but I do think that they will win this game too. I wasn't impressed. I wasn't going to have Bama beat Georgia a couple weeks ago, so I'm not picking them in this spot either.
Right.
That's what it is. We'll see what happens. Big Ten action now. The Big Ten is the second tier of the week this week. Not a lot of big matchups, but a couple ranked matchups. Michigan at Illinois. This is for me the intrigue of this game is how real is Illinois. Illinois has been a good team all year long. This is a Michigan team who's good, not great this year, but they could come into this and win this game pretty easily. Obviously, Michigan's losses on the year, they're 4-2. They've lost to Texas and at Washington. But Illinois, 5-1. Their only loss was to Penn State on the road. Not a bad loss at all. Last week, though, they had an insane game with Purdue, 50-49 in overtime against a really bad Purdue team.
Yeah.
So that's a little worrisome, but maybe kind of a look-ahead spot because obviously this is the biggest game on their schedule. If they win this one and get to 6-1 in the Big Ten, things are looking good for the Illini. The rest of the way, they go to Oregon next week, so that would obviously be a tough matchup. But
yeah, and crazy matchup.
They're hoping for a 10-win season, I think, in Illinois, and maybe you could flirt around a playoff spot if you're at a 10-win season. So this is a huge game in the Big Ten to see where these teams stand as it's an elimination game for Michigan, first of all.
For sure.
They're already almost probably toast, but they could, if they won out, they'd probably be in the playoff consideration. So they have to do this. Illinois, though, is trying to hang around there. I love this game. It's going to be ugly, gross football, but it's going to be a beautiful day. At least I believe in Champaign, so not like any kind of weather Big Ten football. But we know how these teams both want to play. They're both playing in the trenches. They're both going to run the shit out of the ball. Altmaier is just a better quarterback than anybody Michigan's going to put, whoever the hell Michigan decides to put on the field in this game. And that's where I'm going to go. And I think he makes enough plays that Altmaier is going to get it done. And I'm leaning towards Illinois here. Pat Bryant has their most TDs, tied for the most TDs in the receiving in the Big Ten, and 9th in yards. And I don't know where you left me, Mo. I was just saying I think Altmaier is the difference in this game, where the quarterback room is so abysmal for Michigan, and Altmaier at home is a solid quarterback. That's where the difference is. I think that's why Illinois gets it done.
The quarterback room, the situation. I mean, I don't know who is starting for Michigan. Whether it's the Orgy.
I don't think they know. They probably don't even know.
It's the Orgy. It's Jack Tuttle, and then what was the other? I can't remember the other kid's name because they've been also bad. Davis Warren. I don't know who they're running with. None of them are good. No, I mean, and Altmaier is playing really well. He's only has that one interception on the season. I don't know if you mentioned that. And that was against Penn State. And that was like the clinching aspect of that game. He also had a fumble in the end of that game too. So it's 2 turnovers. But that was a hard environment that they had to play in. It wasn't a whiteout, but it was whiteout energy.
Whiteout.
And I just don't think Michigan, the amount of talent that they lost, and even on the coaching staff that they lost, it makes sense that they're having a down year. They have talent on that defense still, but that's not enough to win you those games. And those running backs aren't bad either. Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mobley. They're both good running backs, but it's just overall there's too much that's gone from that team that's too depleted. And they're probably an 8-4 football team because if they have this loss, they're gonna have their third loss. And then Ohio State at the end of the year. I wouldn't expect them to get the win there. Also, their loss to Washington, that's their only road Big Ten game they've played so far, and it's a loss, and now they're going on the road again. I just don't see it working out for them. I see Michigan getting booted out of the top 25. They probably shouldn't be in the top 25 anyways. As 4-2.
They're letting them hang on as the
Yeah.
defending champs.
And it's just the thing. If you win this game, then we'll keep you around, obviously. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've been really impressed. I've been impressed by Illinois, even dating back to last year. I liked what I saw. They were a scrappy team, even though they ended up 5-7. I didn't think they'd be 5-1 going 6 games in, but here they are. They could be 6-1. The Big Ten. Listen, all these SEC teams and all these 5-1, 6-0 SEC teams are ranked so high, and these Big Ten teams are doing the same thing right now. The Big Ten middle tier has been really solid this year, and Illinois is one of those teams that's holding it up. And Michigan's too. Michigan's still. They're at 8-4. 8-4 feels so perfect for them and their roster and everything about that team, but they're still a good football team. Like, you don't want to play Michigan on any Saturday. That's a team it's a hard game to play for because that defense is so good. Their offensive line is still good. They can still run the ball effectively, not as well as they have been able to in years past, but still effectively. It's just they don't have any quarterback play. It's just an old school team. So this is going to be a hard game, but I think I'm surprised that Michigan's the favorites. That's probably just where the money has been as much as anything else.
I was surprised too when I was putting it in that they were the favorite, especially on the road. So
let me see where this line started.
I mean, the fact I think if they're the home team, they're what would that be? Are they 9.5 point favorites at home? I mean, that just seems a little ridiculous to me. But
I'm trying to just find this. It started at 1.5 Michigan, and it just has climbed up. And actually, on Action Network, it says it's up to 4 even. So it probably in places is going up to 4 and 3.5. So yeah, people are just ripping Michigan. They're just raising it and seeing Garrett betting you how long you're going to keep betting on Michigan. We'll give it to you.
Right.
Which scares me a little bit for my Illinois pick, but we'll see what happens.
No, I'm good. I feel comfortable picking Illinois.
This game, this might be the more interesting game though that we're ending with here, as Nebraska travels to
5-1 Nebraska.
5-1 Nebraska travels to Bloomington to take on the 6-0 Indiana Hoosiers, who under Curt Cignetti have just been a force. They haven't scored, Mo. Week 1, they won 31-7. Since then, 77, 42, 52, 42, 41 points. This is an electric football.
You want to know what I was most shocked about? They're the second highest scoring team in college football. It's insane. Tom Allen was like at Penn State right now. He's like, I didn't know we could put that many points up on the board. It's insane, and a large in part to transfer quarterback Curtis Rourke, who came over from a MAC school, came over from Ohio, and is from Canada originally. Got to respect that. This Canadian quarterback taking Indiana by storm, and he's playing extremely well. Really good football. I don't know. Indiana is kind of crazy, honestly, what they're doing.
It is, but Curt Cignetti he knew what he was doing. He was bold when he came in, and he was effective in the portal. He was effective with the recruiting trail. And he said this is what they were going to do. They were going to come in and win he said they were going to win the Big Ten. And right now they're in as good a shape as anybody to win the Big Ten.
I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, and I believe that technically they're like the highest team right now in the Big Ten because I think they have the most conference wins. If I'm not mistaken, I'm looking right now. They are. Oh, they're tied with Oregon, so they're both 6-0. They both have 3 wins in the conference, and tied with Penn State is okay. So they're at the top though.
They have this game this week against Nebraska, big noon. They host Washington at Michigan State, and then home to Michigan at Ohio State before finishing with the rivalry game against Purdue. That Indiana at Ohio State game.
It was electric in COVID. Remember that was when people were like, "Oh, this is it."
That could be like a 1-loss Indiana, undefeated Indiana at an undefeated or 1-loss Ohio State.
Well, they already are 1 loss. We know this.
Oh yeah, sorry. In my brain, they didn't lose last week because that game didn't change any opinion on me for Oregon and Ohio State. Except that Will Howard is sus in the last 5 minutes.
He's
dumb.
I
already knew that. I already
He's
knew
dumb.
that. So nothing changed for me in that game. I still think
No.
Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country.
Well, so did the AP because they only dropped one
Exactly.
spot or two
Because
spots. Yeah.
I mean, because they are. What are we talking? They're 4. They literally dropped from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity here. Like you're talking about teams that I guess need to earn it. With Indiana 6-0 at number 16, they're not even in the playoffs as of today. So this is every win is valuable for them, and going into that Ohio State game undefeated would be amazing.
Oh,
It's probably a
would
goal
be
for them.
massive. Yeah. I mean, it would be. I mean, it's all they want. I mean, obviously, that'd be huge for them. Who have they played so far this year? That's what I want to see. Indiana. Who are their
They
who are
played
their
Northwestern last week, I believe.
who's not good?
They played Maryland, Charlotte, UCLA, Western Illinois, and FIU. It's not a murderer's row of teams.
No, and you got to think
Not
that's part of the
in the
reason why the points are so boosted.
Yes,
this
this is their first test of the year.
It
they
is
get
for
it
sure.
at home. Memorial Stadium's going to be rocking for sure. But
yeah, if they were at Nebraska, I mean, I could see an upset brewing, but I would know. I mean, I would go with Indiana. I mean, Pat Mahomes the third at Nebraska. He's still, I mean, I see true freshman, really young. He's had his moments. That I mean, this is the thing. I thought when Nebraska played Illinois, I was like, oh, they got. I don't think they ever really shot. I think they're kind of false. And that game actually came down to the wire. It was a really good battle.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this game is like. I mean, the line's only 6.5. I wouldn't be surprised if there's only like a field goal difference between these two teams, and it's like a 31-28 game, and Indiana scrapes by. You always want to hope for a good game for Gus Johnson to call. I don't know if these two teams are explosive enough and exciting enough for him, but we'll see.
I think so. I think he's going to be locked in.
It probably will be, but
place is going to be bumping. Indiana's going to be going nuts.
Yeah,
this is the biggest game they've had there in a while. Those fans are great when they show up. I mean, we've seen them. Obviously, you've seen them at basketball games too. Like this is a great fan base when this team is good. So I'm very excited to see how Memorial Stadium looks. And I just think this is going to be a really fun game. I think this Nebraska covers. I think what you said, 31-28, 34-31, that's what we're looking. But I think the Hoosiers on their day on Big Noon get it done and stay undefeated.
I take that. What's Indiana's AP? Like, is this the highest they've been ranked in how long? That's what I want to see. I'm trying to. 16 seems pretty high. I don't feel like they ever got that high in like the Tom Allen era. Let's see. Oh, COVID. They were 7th in the country at one point.
The 7 is crazy.
Well, it was COVID. It didn't matter.
Yeah, it's a wash.
But yeah, most of the time. But outside of that, the highest they ever was 4 in 1967. So.
Well, they're on their way, man.
Yeah,
they're on their way. I don't know if they're going to reach number 4.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
It is exciting, man. This is what you want. Like, there's so much with the NIL. This is the first year of it, so we don't know for sure. But it seems like there's more parity in college football. Finally.
Yeah, there definitely is.
We've achieved that.
Yeah, and speaking of, we're looking ahead to next week. We were talking about Texas Georgia, a game that everyone circled on their calendar. You're a college football fan. Oregon and Indiana is not a game I ever would have circled, but now it's like must see television.
Must see.
Yeah,
game day might be back in Oregon. Honestly,
that'd be crazy. 2 out of 3 weeks in Eugene.
What are we? Let me see what we're looking at for next Saturday though. Before I make that declaration, because it could be A&M LSU, but that would be a second time at A&M. They've already been to Bama. For Missouri, probably not that. If Nebraska, well, that's Big Noon though. I was gonna say if Nebraska wins, it could be
Penn State, Wisconsin.
No, probably not that. Illinois, Oregon. This is
Illinois, Oregon's next week. I thought we said
Indiana. No.
Oh,
Indiana's later, a couple weeks.
Later they play. Okay.
Some other big games this week, though, just to mention as we wrap up here. Miami and Louisville. That could be a really tricky game for Miami. They got to come in there and play. They're only 5-point favorites. Louisville could easily win that game and mess up Miami's season.
Miami's played a lot of their last couple games have been super close. Virginia Tech was super close. Cal was super close. Yep. So,
and we'd be remiss to mention Army and Navy. Navy hosting Charlotte. 16-point favorites. Army 17-point favorites at home at West Point against East Carolina. The other interesting game for me though is Notre Dame, number 12 in the Nate. So they're right in that playoff spot. They're going to Atlanta to face Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They're 14-point favorites, but I think Georgia Tech gets the upset done there. I think Georgia Tech beats Notre Dame.
I would believe that. And
I'm probably going to wager on that plus 14 easily.
All right, so I got a question for you. What two teams, there's only two teams in college football this season who have not trailed at all. Do you know this?
Texas?
Nope. They were one of the three last week, but then they were down for that field goal. Army is one.
And SMU.
Nope.
I don't know who.
Kind of back comes Indiana. Indiana has not trailed for 1 second so far this year. So
let's see how it goes for them and Big Noon kickoff. We'll see.
It's gonna be fun. It's a fun week of college football.
This is a great. We're right in the middle of it. College football. There's
every week is a fun week.
Hockey and basketball starts next week. We're living the dream now, people. Yeah. So enjoy your Saturday. Get to Outlet Liquor, your place to buy a case, George River Boulevard. And we'll be here next week to break down another sweet set of games. But we got some juicy ones. Got some juicy ones here. Georgia and Texas, the main event. Lock in on your TV at 7:30 on ABC. So have a great night, folks, and we'll see you later.